Welcome back to another Conquest Corner. On this particular episode, we are continuing our ever dive through the rules update for Conquest: The Last Argument Kings from Parabellum Games. So it is currently the 12th as of recording. It might be a day or so after when you actually see this. But at this moment, I'm kind of going through, giving my first thoughts on what has changed for all these armies. So both just discussing it, giving ideas of what I think about it, different changes in list builds, what it could mean for them, and all of that. Now, I in no way claim to be an expert on all these factions, but I know the game pretty well, and I'd like to be able to just share thoughts and see what other people think as well. So, in this particular one, we're going to go over Spires. Now, a few things. One, I don't know which order this one will come out in, so it'll be one of the ones put out, but we are going through all of these. I look for what they changed, and I do go through looking for things they altered without necessarily notifying. So if something is added, it's in red, but when things get deleted, they just kind of don't show up. So I do look for that. Keep in mind also that if you're looking to get any Conquest stuff, that in the show notes underneath this, we do have a code, Train Kickers, as well as a link that you can click on so you can save 10% if you want to buy anything from the store, like the brand new Source Rings coming out, which is one of the other reviews I'm going to do. I haven't done that one yet. I might have to wait till tomorrow because I think I'm going to really have to try and digest it first before I talk about it. But we're going to take a look at Spires. We're going to see what changed for them. We're going to find it's not tons of stuff, although the things that did change are huge. I think at least. So if you're watching this, the left side has the new rules that just came out. The right side has the old. You'll notice it says old across the top for that very reason. All right. So one of the big changes is depending on which of the subfactions you're taking, the directorate, they did change the Biomancer slash or High Clone Executor. So in other words, that has to be your warlord. The first part is not different. The first part here, personalize epigenetic triggers. While the warlord's on the field, all regiments your armies gain burnout. Only one unit may use burnout. However, if you already had the rule naturally, it doesn't count. So another unit gets to do burnout. That's the same thing the directorate did before. Here's the additional things, though. All biomancers in the army had the following two additional biomancies. So one is subdermal keratin induction. You choose a target-friendly light regiment that's within 12, and you call them medium until the end of the round. It could only be performed once per round, regardless of the number of biomancers, so they don't want you spamming this everywhere and running like a ton of light force, and then suddenly everything you have is scoring. But this is really big because this turns a light unit into a scoring unit. So you're looking at, your Vanguard clone infiltrators. You're looking at force-grown drones. You could do it with, let's see, prowlers aren't yet. I mean, there's options that aren't out yet. You could obviously do it with those. Those are probably the main two. What's the other one? I know there's one other. Strix. Yeah. Strix don't have, I don't know, they're regular. Nope, nothing matters there. Okay, I was just checking if regular did anything about scoring. They've never changed that. And I don't see them having it here. So, yeah, that's absolutely fine then. You can even put it on them. Pause briefly there for a second to check to make sure they didn't update the rule for irregular. They did not. So you can even put it on the Strix if you want. You're then putting it potentially on a move 10. And we're going to see momentarily that there's a way to, normally biomancers are essentially 12-inch bubble, but there is a mutation that you can take. I believe it's a mutation. That means that, no. It's one of your base abilities that you get to count. It's the supremacy ability. My apologies. The mutation lets you cast 2. The supremacy ability will let you end up saying, hey, you're near an objective. You count as in my zone. So that means a unit, say like a Strix or something like that, that's pushed its way upfield, can start scoring for you as soon as the biomancer's on the field. So that is a huge and very, very useful change. That's going to do a lot. So we're seeing they fixed a lot in terms of scoring. You can now have a scoring light unit. The other thing that happens is Adrenal Surge. This is another one of your biomancers you can choose. Regiment within 12 inches loses its broken status as if it had rallied, although it doesn't count as actually having activated. Which means if you have a unit that's sitting on objective that can't take it because they broke, you can unbreak them. All right. The supremacy ability is the other change that I talked about. So gone is quite a bit, actually. The provoke instability, getting +2 attacks, but causing various levels of decay to your units. What you get now is friendly regiments in range of a objective zone count as if they're in range of a friendly biomancers for the person performing biomancies. So if your warlord is a biomancer, instead of getting extra attacks but destroying your units, anyone who's in range of an objective zone automatically counts as in range of the Biomancer. Since the Biomancer's abilities are usually 12-inch range, now you're looking at, and notice it's friendly Biomancer, not that particular Biomancer. So normally they're 12-inch range, which means if you have one or two Biomancers, now anyone who's near an objective or close to those Biomancers counts. This really lets you extend out the two that we saw, as well as some of the other ones we're going to talk about shortly. So I think if you like Biomancers, this is very exciting. All right, biggest changes were to characters, and Biomancer had no other change otherwise. So the Biomancer got a variety of changes, although none of it is the stuff that sits here, which is fine. They didn't necessarily need anything extra, not with the extra things that they get. Obviously, I said for this new stuff, retinues are gone. So any of the buffs you used to take in that sort of retinue way are just all gone. Most characters got a points increase and got an alteration because of that. Biomancers just aren't one of them. High Clone Executor, so this one went up. It went up by 15 points. No stat change, although the big change we see there is that in this case, it can take 2 of those tactics instead of 1. So this kind of stuff, for 15 points, is probably worth it, because when you take a look at what these can do, they can do you quite a bit. And keep in mind that now when character stands go, the unit can activate right behind them, that unit that they're in. So you do have some extra, all characters kind of have a buff in that way as well. So some of your points might be going to that. So you can get them Bastion 1 for the event, the regiment that you're in there with. They gain double time, or they gain loose formation. Having 2 is better than 1. I don't know if that's necessarily worth exactly 15 points, but the other things they've done are probably worth it. I'm kind of surprised not more of a change for them, but that's okay. Nothing for the Lineage Highborn. Now again, I'm looking for red / what I noticed when I went through before, so there is a small chance that we miss if they change something slightly. I am also taking a look at Mainstay and Restricted, because they do change that from time to time. So we're looking at the Ferromancer. The Ferromancer to me is, okay, it's technically a change, but it's more of a clarification, or a makes sense clarification, makes sense change. That for Induced Lethargy, which removes lowers your defense by 1 to an enemy unit, you can only be affected by that once. So every regiment can only be affected by this once. You can't double up or triple up and knock someone down. Technically in this game, when you have a stat that's put as a plus thing or a minus thing, it can stack. This is specifically calling out that you cannot. So they just cleared up the fact that no, you can't just keep getting more and more of this on them, which is good. That kind of stuff just isn't fun. And as the person who plays them, if you're playing them, it hopefully isn't too much fun for you either. All right, Pneumatic Assassin. Some very big changes. 1, Pneumatic Assassin no longer takes a warband. If you notice, there is no Mainstay, no Restricted. Your Pneumatic Assassin is on their own. Pneumatic Assassin says cannot be a warlord, doesn't have access to a warband. Instead, they join an infantry regiment that it is legally allowed to join. Remember, you're legally allowed to join are things like, a infantry unit. They have to say that they can take characters, or I should say they can't say they don't take characters, because there's some regiments that do that. Each regiment may only have 1 character in, all those base rules. The other addition is that right place, right time. So one of the main rules change. We haven't gone through main rules changes. I'm going to be doing that as well. But one of the main rules changes is that Find New Escort is gone. So you don't get to leave your unit. Whatever unit you're in, that's the unit you're going to be in. Pneumatic Assassin, right place, right time, is essentially Find New Escort. So it gives them, you get to leave, double your move. They couldn't have went, your unit, all of that. Essentially the basic rules are now put into this. So the Pneumatic Assassin is one of the few units in the game that can actually go and hop unit to unit. Especially good on Pneumatic Assassin. Better for character hunting in case they're trying to avoid them. All right, let's take a look at some mutations. So some minor changes here. As we look for Degenerative Aura, they made that Biomancer and Ferromancer only. So it gives that unit lethal demise, and the enemies in contact can't heal. That's more of just, it makes sense that it should be on those. For the Biotic Hive, and this is the same thing for the Burrowing Parasites mutation, they just say you can't take both of them. So Burrowing Parasites gives you Armor Piercing 1. Biotic Hive gives you extra 2 barrage shots and deadly shot special rule, they don't want you to double those up. That's all it really is. So that's what it says there. And notice for that is the character stand. And they did alter that, which is good. That becomes a little bit too much. All right, we're going to take a look at the masteries then. I have to go past that on this side. Obviously, I'm trying to show both at the same time so we can see where the differences are and talk about them. So, Mastery of the Flesh, if you take a look at this is different. Actually, there's two differences here. One, if you look under Tactical, right here, what you'll notice is that Mindless Protectors is no longer here. Mindless Protectors isn't here because it's Seek New Escort, and Seek New Escort is out of the game. So that's why that one got removed. You'll notice that Masteries of the Flesh, that this one is new overall. So, it's the Mastery of the Flesh, Mastery of the Flesh, 40 points. You have to be an Infantry Ferromancer or Biomancer only, or Infantry Biomancer. This Mastery may be purchased more than one character stand. The character stand can perform 2 character actions per activation. In addition, you get to resolve 2 Ferromancies or 2 Biomancies. It is 40 points. If you're taking a Biomancer Warlord, so your supremacy ability is that anyone close to an objective counts as close to you, I think this is an auto-include at least on one of your Biomancers, and maybe more than one. Because that means now you have not entirely board-wide, but let's face it, a lot of these missions have 6 some objectives, and a 12-inch bubble from you with those 6 objectives is most of the board, or at least most of the important board or the spots you care about, or who you want to put these Biomancies on. So I do find that exceptionally useful if you're actually taking that as a Warlord. If you're not, I still think it's really good. Being able to get 2 of these out is very useful, but when you have that bubble, a little bit different. When you're not restricted to the bubble, oh, absolutely. Ferromancers, it's absolutely fine for as well. I kind of look at Biomancers more myself. For those Ferromancies, so overall, you have the same as that Ferromancies you had before. There is going to be a big change to one of them. All the Ferromancies relate to drawing a card, and if that regiment's within 12 inches, something happens. Most of them, you place it, so Accelerated Hibernation, Induced Vigor, you place it at the bottom of the stack, and it says it takes place at the very end when the regiment does something. Siphon Strength is you pull power from a different regiment, all of that. The one that changed is the Ferrometric Drive. So in this, there's all in red. The change is actually rather small. So as it says here, the old one is that you draw your next command card, same as that. You select the regiment within 12 inches of the character stand. Now you select the regiment within 12 inches of this character stand that has not activated during this round and activate it. So before, you choose a regiment within 12, it acts immediately and takes 2 actions of the same type in that round. What it does now is you activate it. Sorry, just want to make sure I had the correct wording here. Yeah, you select the stand within 12. It's not activated during the round, and you activate it. The regiment activates as if its command card was drawn, and it gets 2 actions. And it may take 2 actions of the same type this round. So it does allow you to take the same type of action. And then, you suffer decay, all that. That part's normal. So wording difference here is, my hope is a clarification. Maybe they ruled that this was the case, but the rules didn't say it. Now it specifically says it has to be a regiment that hasn't gone yet. Previously, that was not the case. It just says you treat as if you had went. Because, yeah, you're drawing your next card. No, actually, my apologies. You draw your next card if the regiment is within 12. Okay, no, so my apologies. Before, when you drew it, the regiment had to be within 12. They wouldn't have activated because it's, oh, no, okay, I see how they could do it. If you drew, as I understood it, if you draw a card, let's say you draw Force-Grown Drones. I draw that card. Okay, I find a Force-Grown Drone regiment within 12. Previously, I could make sure they act immediately, take 2 actions, all of that. To me, it sounds like it wouldn't have to have been one that already went, or it could be one that had already went. I just had to have more of the cards. Now it's forcing you that you are going to count them as activated automatically. So you can't already be activated to activate. You have to be unactivated, as it says. So to me, that's the change. which is a good change. That's honestly how I read that. My hope is that's the way it is. That's the way it is now. So if it was something else before, it don't matter. It ain't that way anymore. Biomancies. I do want to spend some time talking about this because this is where the biggest changes are occurring to me. In terms of the rest of this, you're going to see some very small sprinklings of things. This is the biggest change because now you have ways to cast multiple biomancies. Multiple biomancies, well, sure, but multiple biomancies. And anyone near an objective can count as close enough to you because you'll notice all these are 12-inch bubble. So you can get extra march. Notice these are still draw command cards. If it's within normally 12 of the stand, it acts immediately and does something. So more march, more clash, volley, all of that. Hey, you get some decay. You get rupture. You get to explode and hurt the enemies around you. Virulence. You get deadly blades or deadly shot special rule. Harvest essence. This is where you lower stats on one side, you gain stats on the other side. The regiment gets to act, so you draw your command card. If the regiment's from 12, then you put them at the bottom. Then exchange the command card at the bottom of the stack with this regiment's command card. The regiment then acts. So now that you can do this in this larger grouping, and you have those extra 2 biomancies to cause essentially scoring options, unbreak and a light unit becomes scoring, I think biomancers are going to be a much bigger thing. I'm not saying you have to run tons. I know it's 2 max. I'm not saying you have to run both, but I do think there's a very good reason to run one. And if you're wanting to take that as your warlord, which I think is rather a good idea, then I think taking 2 with those upgrades is really good. I think you can really kind of spread out what you're doing here and really get a lot of use out of those. When you take a look at this, okay, hey, I'm nowhere near the unit that ends up wanting to charge, get clash up, all that sort of stuff. Doesn't matter. Are they near an objective? Is that unit sitting on an objective nowhere near me? And they would love to have +1 clash. And then I can inspire when they go, all of that. That is huge. Because remember, they do act immediately. That will give you lots of play. So I do think there's a lot there for those guys. When we look through the rest of it, like I said, there's not tons of other changes. I did look also for things that were removed. There's not much in terms of removed either. So when we get to some of the first changes, where are we looking? Brute drones. Brute drones went up by, I believe it's 20 points. If memory serves. It doesn't always. There's, yep, by 20 points. So they were just too good by about 20. The additional stands, though, doesn't change at all. So 20 points isn't too bad. The fact that you're going to save points to some extent, unless you're taking a lot of those biomancers with that new upgrade, you're saving points because you can't go down the retinue tree, means you got some points to spend. For other changes, the Incarnate Sentinels, I think, still were 3. Yep, they were 3. That was a red that didn't get removed. I believe that was correct. Siegebreaker Behemoth did get some alteration. For that Siegebreaker Behemoth, went up by 10 points. Now it's 10 attacks instead of 8 attacks, 16 wounds instead of 14. Resolve went down, which is good. Resolve 5 is ridiculous. Nothing should be Resolve 5 in the game, unless you stack up bonuses, sure, but Resolve 4. I am a bit surprised that they went for more survivability on something that has Smite and giving it more attacks. But, it is the brand new model. Maybe they want to sell it, and you can get it for 10% off. Maybe they want to sell it. Or they know overall that giant monsters can still be picked off when they're coming in, especially when only moving 6. This thing is very slow, so it's a little bit easier to stay away from. And this thing is meant to just destroy people it gets to. So you're really trying to take this thing out long before. Or charge into it with someone who really moves most of that defense. And now that you're essentially getting through twice as many resolves, especially if you have, say, Fearless. Okay. It does have Fearless, but if you, like I said, failing twice as many, or if you have a rule that if it rolls a 6, it causes extra damage, things like that, you can get through it. But that is a really, really good unit. All right. There was some changes here to command models. Catablock Node got a slight alteration. For its slight alteration, so that is the same thing. Before the attack, previous Catabolic Node was when the regiment declares a clash, before you perform the attack, roll a 2d6, explosion happens. Now it's a may. Before it wasn't a may. So when you're about to clash, you do that first. Now it's, hey, you may choose to detonate this node. If you do, here's how all that works. Right place, right time, we talked about. It is seek new escort. In essence, that's all that actually says. Keep in mind, this is a faction that did get some updates recently. I believe it was the September timeline. So that's why a lot of the units didn't actually get any alterations. Like I said, there might have been a loss of like a keyword somewhere. Not that I noticed. I do tend to look for those. But I didn't happen to see any of those. I didn't happen to see any points changes on little things or like the change in impact hits on anything. Like I said, I did try to look for it because they do some of those sneaky ones, but I didn't really notice it. So far of the factions I've looked through, I haven't looked through them all yet because I'm putting the videos out in the order that I look through them. They so far have the smallest amount of changes. However, with those smallest amount of changes, they absolutely, I think, have some of the biggest alterations of what those things will mean. So when we think of type changes, there we go. When we think of type changes here, then, we're seeing that Biomancer works very, very differently. I do like it overall. I think it does play more into playing the game rather than just trying to kill your opponent. My guess is they believe, at least now that you have, say, Siegebreaker behemoths and all, that your ability to take down your opponent isn't necessarily the same issue you used to have. You can get a lot further with that. They didn't really touch your other characters much, unlike some of the other factions where your characters got other types of buffs. So, oh, you went up by 10 points, but you got an extra attack or an extra wound or something like that. They really tried to avoid that here. My guess is they felt like the characters were in a very decent place, but they wanted, to make them more in line with the sort of points cost that we're putting characters at. The Pneumatic Assassin losing essentially the Warband is very interesting, though. That means if you want to take a Pneumatic Assassin or two, you can take them much, much cheaper now because you don't have to take a Warband tax. Not that you weren't taking the Warbands that they were with, but now at least you have some other options. And you are allowed to seek no escort, but you don't have to start that way. You can start with where you want and then go up in that unit and then flip out later if you need to or anything like that. So you started before in Force-Grown Drones, Bound Clones, or Vanguard Clones. You now can start somewhere else. So you can actually start in maybe the unit that you want to. You could look at where might you want to start? That is a really good question. So looking through, the only other thing is if you really want to start in like Desolation drones or something like that, or Onslaught drones. Yeah, because those were options they didn't have before. So you get a little bit more play of where you start. Probably the cheaper thing is that you avoid some tax because of the other warbands you're going to be taking, because this one was never allowed to be your warlord. So you're taking other warbands. Because of the other warbands, that means you can avoid taking extras of these units if you want to be able to take something else instead. So if you took, say, Force-Grown Drones to be able to take one of your other units in, say for your Ferromancer or something like that, you don't need an extra unit of them. If you only want one unit or one giant unit, you only have to take one. So I do like that. I do think that's a very interesting change. And it does fit with the whole idea of you being an assassin. You should be kind of stuck into the army rather than bringing your own large sets of it. So I do think the way they did that was smart. I do like it in general. And I'm just checking one thing on it. Yeah, still has the same thing. So still has flank, still has flurry, still chooses when that unit comes in, all those sort of things. That does mean the other option you have then, if you want to put him on a unit that, since he's still allowed to hop out, if you want to put him on, where might you want to put him on? You could potentially put him on one of your shooting units. Let's take a look. Bound, no. Oh, that's still not a bad spot for him. Marksman clones, if you wanted to guarantee when marksman clones come in. So you can guarantee the turn they come in. You can guarantee they say come in turn 2. They can take shots, and then he can leave and go join someone else. I know the order's a little bit different, but you can essentially walk away. So I would say big winners are anyone or any list that wants Biomancers. Anywhere where you thought Biomancers were a good idea, absolute win. Anywhere where you were leaning into, honestly, just about anything, High Clone Executors or Lineage Highborns, any of that, you're going to be losing some of those retinue options that you might have really been using. And to be honest, you really didn't get anything for the loss. So they kind of, for this army, they kind of removed it and didn't give you anything in its place. Um, Most of those are the sorts of things we've seen. Most other options have, although you had the regen. They didn't give these guys extra regen because you did have one of them that gave you regen 2 and stuff like that. So some of your healing's probably down a little bit as well. So I would say for the factions here, Biomancer's got a huge win. Everyone else, no. I'm not saying they're trying to push you to do Biomancers, but they're definitely making that a much more attractive option. But I want to hear what you guys think. So, are you really excited about these changes? Are you fine with it? Are you really upset because you love taking tons of retinues in one of those things on your highborn and that made your list sing? Unlike some of the other armies, your points aren't really changing much at all. A character or so went up, and your behemoth really went up, and like and the brutes went up by 20. You're not really looking at a lot of difference in points. So you could run very similar lists or really kind of do the new where you're looking at those Biomancers with upgrades or Ferromancer with those upgrades and all of that. So, but do let me know what you think in the comments below. Like I said, if you're looking to buy some Conquest, we have a code so that way you can save yourself some money. Get that new Siegebreaker Behemoth, which looks amazing. I've seen the thing. I haven't played against it yet. I know I have a game coming up, but I don't actually know what army my opponent plays. So I guess I'm going to find out. Maybe there will be one there. But that'll do it for us for this Conquest Corner. Take a look for the coverage for all the other factions, as well as the brand new Sorcerer Kings, as well as the rule book. Some of this I'm going to get to immediately. Some of it I might need a day because I'm going to run out of ability to talk soon. All right. Then, on behalf of everyone here at the show, have a good hobbying and some great gaming.